Hi there, my name is Khody Damestani. I'm a psychotherapist and I'm also the co-founder of mental fitness app MyMindPal. So I want to talk to you about a few things today. First of all, I want to talk to you about how the brain responds to a pandemic. Then I want to talk to you about the range of different emotional responses people are exhibiting at the moment and what's happening with the mind. Then I want to go on to talk about the kind of strategies and techniques that you might use to protect your mental health, to build resilience, and to manage stress. And then finally, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about how we might start going about building the kind of habits that will allow us to get through these challenging times. So we are living in unprecedented times right now. The pandemic and the subsequent lockdown means that there is nothing normal about life at the moment. So what's happening with the brain? Let's explore what the brain does. Well, first of all, for many people, the pandemic and the subsequent lockdown would have activated the brain's automatic threat detection mechanism. Now, this system has been designed to allow us to protect ourselves from danger and to mobilize the body to take action. And it does this by the brain secreting chemicals that trigger an enormous physiological arousal in the body. And that physiological arousal is designed to prepare our body to fight, to physically fight, or to physically run away from danger. Neither of which is very helpful in a pandemic. Now, that would have been really useful back in prehistoric times for our ancestors that found themselves in a life or death situation on a daily basis. Not much use in modern times, certainly not much use in a pandemic. So the brain doesn't really know what to do with a pandemic. Meanwhile, it continues to activate this fight or flight response, but it gets to the point where if fight or flight is not an option, then the brain takes over sometimes with a third option, and that option is shut down. So if we're in a situation where we feel trapped, where fight or flight is not a feasible or effective response, then the brain, to protect us from this physiological arousal, it initiates a shutdown. And as a result of that, you become disconnected from the experience. And sometimes you become disconnected from your own body as well. So there's a disassociation, there's a disconnection. And this would also explain why a lot of people are really struggling at the moment to motivate themselves. A lot of people are feeling life is very strange and it has this sort of unreal quality to it at the moment. And that is the brain initiating that shutdown response. So we're going to be going between fight or flight and shutdown. And that is the brain doing what it was designed to do. Now, meanwhile, the mind is interpreting that physiological arousal. So there's this activation in the body and the mind interprets that in a number of different ways. So I've spoken to lots of people. Some are feeling angry, some are feeling fear, some are feeling trapped, some are feeling a sense of denial, which again is that shutdown response. And the important thing to remember is when we perceive this physiological arousal, the brain has to understand it. So for a lot of people, that arousal, that stress is not particularly comfortable and it can activate a range of different emotions. Now that's exacerbated by the fact that our two basic human needs are threatened at the moment as well. The need to survive and feel safe, but also our freedom as well. It's really important as human beings for us to feel a sense of autonomy in our lives. It's really important for us to feel self-initiating in our behavior. And right now that's difficult, isn't it? As a result of the pandemic and then the lockdown as well, a lot of people feel that their freedom has been taken away. They don't know how long the virus is going to be here for. They don't know how long until we feel some sense of normality can return both at work and at home. Everything is uncertain. And as a result of that, we might feel angry, we might feel frightened, we might feel a range of emotions. The important thing is to remember that we're all in this together and we are all facing a threat and our brain is responding in the way that it's responding. And we don't have a huge amount of control over that. So having a compassionate understanding towards others would be really helpful right now. And to recognize that even if you're responding in a way that's different to how somebody else is responding, just to recognize that actually we're all just doing the best we can here to be able to manage in very challenging times. Now, even before the pandemic, there is a huge number of people out there that are struggling with their mental health. And now, as a result of the pandemic and the lockdown, that number has increased greatly. Now, the good news is strategies and techniques to be able to protect your mental health, to build resilience, and to manage stress have never been more accessible than there are now. There are a range of different digital applications, for example, that can help people to do this. Now, I know this as co-founder of mental fitness app MyMindPal. We've seen a significant increase in the number of companies coming to us for support and a significant increase in the engagement from our existing clients as well. So what are we talking about when we're talking about managing our mental health, protecting our mental health? What's the objective here? Well, the first one is to manage our thinking mind. One thing that happens right now is, as a result of our threat detection system being overly activated, is it has an impact on what we pay attention to. So we tend to notice threats and danger now more than we would do normally. We tend to notice negativity maybe now more than we would do normally. And that includes not just the external world, but also in our own mind as well. So we might tend to generate and notice negative thoughts more often. And if we continue to do that, those thoughts are in danger of becoming beliefs. If we continue to focus on these negative ideas and we become locked into this way of thinking, then we start to wire those ideas into our brain as well. Now, one way to protect doing that is to be able to learn, firstly, how to be able to challenge those negative thoughts. That's really helpful, to interrupt those negative thoughts. But more importantly than that, it's important that we're putting time aside to begin to train ourselves to develop the right attitudes and thinking styles that will allow us to believe that we can cope. And that's really important, to believe that we can cope with the challenge of the pandemic, to believe that we can cope with the idea of going back to work again. So by working on certain thinking styles such as optimism, gratitude and resilience, by working on these on a regular basis, it will boost our belief in our ability to cope. And mental imagery is a really good way that you might do that. Now, mental imagery is when you imagine things in your mind vividly as you can, bringing in all the senses. And this works because the mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So when you imagine something vividly in your mind, as in the case of optimism, if you imagine things going the way you want them to go, connecting with that idea emotionally. In the case of gratitude, being truly grateful for things in your life that you're grateful for, connecting with that idea emotionally. Now, if you do that regularly enough, it starts to wire into your brain. You take it from the realm of thoughts into beliefs, and then it starts to wire into your brain. But you need to connect with it emotionally. You need to do it frequently and with enough emotional intensity. Then you start to develop thinking styles that will help you right now. Now, as far as resilience is concerned, one very useful skill is being able to step back from a situation and to engage your rational mind rather than being hijacked by your emotional mind. Now, what happens at the moment with the threat detection is your emotional mind will hijack your rational mind, and you tend to be less logical and less rational. And being able to step back and to recognize there's a number of different ways I can look at a situation. It's how I respond to this situation that's actually far more important than the actual situation. And resilience and connecting with that idea is really important. Another thing you can do with resilience as well is to remind yourself that you've coped with challenges before. You have coped with challenges and you've come out the other end. And connecting with that experience, reminding yourself that that's true, and connecting with what it felt like to be able to overcome challenge in the past would be a really useful thing to be reminding yourself of right now. Now, the other thing we can do is we can work directly on our bodies. So managing our thinking minds, but also working directly on our bodies and our nervous systems. So it's our nervous system that manages our energy levels. And we have kind of like an accelerator and we have a brake. So we have this accelerator, the sympathetic nervous system, and we have a brake that's the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what tends to happen at the moment when we're noticing threats more is that accelerator is being pushed a little bit too hard and the brake is not being used often enough and things are a little bit out of balance. And to bring that equilibrium back, we need to work directly on the body. And one way you might do that is to breathe and make sure you're breathing a certain way. So rather than breathing shallowly from the chest, which tends to happen when we're feeling stressed or anxious, then breathing more instead from the diaphragm, breathing deeply from the belly. Takes getting used to, but it's a really good skill. And if you practice it like anything, it will improve. And the other thing you want to be able to do is to be able to be aware of what's happening in your body. So doing some kind of body awareness scan would be really helpful as well. Because that fight or flight energy that I was speaking about earlier on, if it can't be discharged by running or fighting, then it gets trapped in the nervous system. And when it's trapped in the nervous system, first thing you need to do is notice where in the body you carry stress and tension when you do. Notice where that is, and then being able to discharge and let go of that energy, to release that energy. And there's a skill called progressive muscular relaxation, which teaches you to be able to tense muscles and then relax them. So the brain learns the difference between loose muscles and tense muscles, and it allows you to discharge that survival energy that you might be carrying around in your body that you may not be aware of, although you may be aware of some of those aches and pains. Maybe you've been experiencing a little bit more of those. So the important thing is to make a start doing something. Choose an exercise that you feel is the best fit for you, and then do your best to make your mental health routine a daily practice. So how do we go about building the healthy habits that will allow us to get through this challenging time? Whether those habits be, I want to exercise more, I want to eat more healthily, maybe you want to meditate more. How do you go about doing that? Well, normally what we do when we want to motivate ourselves to do something is we look at motivation and willpower, don't we? Makes sense, that's where you look. But the latest research in behavior change has shown actually that's not where we should be looking. If we want to build habits rather than motivation and willpower, we want to make those habits as easy as possible to do. That's the most important thing. Make them really easy. Take that abstract goal of I want to exercise more and break it down into a very specific and small behavior. So for example, say just 5 squats. Now 5 squats is really easy to do, but that's kind of the point. Even on days where you don't really feel like doing it, you can still do 5 squats. Next thing you want to do is you want to trigger that habit. That's really important to do as well. Trigger that behavior. And the best way to trigger a behavior is to attach it to an already existing habit. Piggyback it to an already existing habit. So you might decide that brushing my teeth, as soon as I finish brushing my teeth, I'm going to do 5 squats straight away. And I'm going to allow myself to feel good about doing 5 squats. That's really important, to allow that habit to grow organically as well. And on days where I feel I can do more, then I'll do 10 squats. And of course, 5 squats is going to get easier pretty quickly, as well as your leg muscles become stronger, and that habit will grow organically. So make the habit very easy to do, feel good that you've made a start, and then trigger it by attaching it to an already existing habit or finding a natural point in your day where you can do that habit. That is the most important thing when it comes to habits. Now, for example, I have clients that want to meditate more. Meditation, if you've ever tried it, is quite a challenging thing to do. So what we started with is, the trigger is when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes. And when I open my eyes, I take 3 deep breaths. Now, 3 deep breaths is easy to do, isn't it? Even when you don't really feel like doing it. And on days where you feel you can do more, then you can do more. And even 3 deep breaths, you get a sense of relief and relaxation from doing that. So it feels good, and that habit will grow by allowing you to feel good. So that is the most important way to build habits. Proven by empirical research as well. Make the habit easy, trigger that habit. Don't rely on the brute force of motivation and willpower. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that really helpful. I also hope as well that you can use these strategies as you go back to work as well. Life is going to be very different. There's going to be a lot of adjustment that people are going to have to do. But the most important thing is to make sure that you are doing something that's working on your mental health, to be kind and understanding to yourself and to other people as well, and to recognize it's going to be a little while before things go back to normal. So just working on these areas the best you can is the most important thing.